So we are eagerly awaiting this reading performance by Meeta Vashisht of Lal Ded. I think she will introduce Lal Ded. Or I wanted to do it too, but she'll do it. No. I just have read her poems and it's just very, very beautiful. Her performance is called She of the Four Names. And we'll get to know about that more, of course, of the four names. But right now, the name that we will introduce is Meeta Vashisht. A big hand for her, everybody. I think most of us know that Mita is a well-known stage, film, and television actress. Actor, if you like. Actress, okay. She has played a wide range of roles. Her most prominent appearance includes the sci-fi television series Space City Sigma, and of course Swabhiman, and there are many others which I'll just let it pass because there are too many names, because Meeta has been around for some time. 35. And 35 years, thank you Meeta, as an actress. And always active. I've known her personally. I've had the pleasure of seeing many of her performances, and she has inspired so many people. And what she has not included here in her very humble bio note is she has held several positions in the National School of Drama, National Film Board, and here and there. One keeps on hearing her names as guest speakers here and everywhere. And it shows a person who's not only experimenting, but is so ready to give of herself. A person who doesn't really want any special attention, yet is definitely special. Meeta Vashisht.
Thank you, Anju. I need a mic. Should I use this one?
Yeah, please.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Anju, for this actually lovely introduction. And thank you, Poetry Festival, Pondicherry, Auroville, Gayatri, Anju. And I'm quite overwhelmed, actually, of being in the presence of all of you poets. Because I think somewhere the poet is always a divine being. And as we know, and I wouldn't say I've brought Lal Ded here. I think she just wanted to meet all of you. She does that. 14th century poetess, Lal Ded. She's the one who decides where she wants to go, and I just follow. So I think her desire to meet all the poets here is what has brought her here. I'm just following. Of course, I'm not doing the play here, but I would be speaking about her, presenting her works, and let's see what follows. So the Vak, of course, the Vach is the spoken, and there are all these things about creation which say, in the Bible it says, and in the beginning there was the Word. And then in our own Vedic mythology, tradition, we believe that it was the Om that was the first utterance from which the world was created and came into existence. And of course, a recent American paper, scientific paper, talks about having recorded the humming of the movement of the universe. And it's very similar to the Om, the Indian Om, they call it. So clearly the Vach, or the uttered, that which is uttered, the spoken word, the Vak, is very important. That's why I'm very nervous in the presence of all of you people of divinity in a way. Interestingly also, a lot of the earlier, I'm probably carrying coals to Newcastle, or you already know that, but all of our great epics are composed in verse, in poetry, and not in prose. So just about everything that has existed from decades, centuries, which is of value to the human being, is in the form of poetry and verse. So we come to Lal Ded, 14th century, Kashmir. So this is a question that I ask usually lay people meaning those who are not writers. But in an audience, there are all kinds of people. But I am probably a little embarrassed about asking how many of you know which are the two languages that go into the making of the Kashmiri language. Sanskrit, yes, is one. And the other one? Persian, yes, absolutely. Sometimes people say Urdu and all that. These are the two great streams. And so imagine the two great traditions that go into the making of the Kashmiri language. So the kind of DNA that language carries. And of course, Lal Ded's Kashmiri was a little different to what the Kashmiri is spoken now. It had more words of a kind that a lot of people are not sure what the meaning is. I had spoken to Dr. Ganju, who passed away some time ago, but he was a Kashmiri scholar who actually withstood the threats of the terrorists during during those times when Kashmir was being emptied of all Kashmiri Pandits. And he says, no, I can't leave, and your bullets will not kill me, because Kashmiris are great astrologers also. Their erudition is huge. So he said, he was also an astrologer, and he said that Mera to Brihaspat mein likha hai. It's written in my Brihaspat, in my chart, that no terrorist bullets will kill me, so don't waste your time with me. So apparently the terrorists picked him up 6 times and brought him right back home, because he refused to be cowed down by them. He was a frail old man. He refused to leave Kashmir because he was wanting to sort of finish his research on tabulating the entire cultural history of Kashmir. And as we know, the Pandits are the ones who actually were the teachers of the Kashmiris in Kashmir. Not to mention that Ayurveda and mathematics and everything has come from the Kashmiri font head. So it's literally the font head of our subcontinent. So Lal Ded comes in the 14th century at a time when there is a Muslim king who is ruling Kashmir, but at that time the Muslim kings also would, the Shivratri Puja would start with the palace, with the Muslim king actually initiating it. And Shivratri is their main festival. So Lal Ded comes at a time, she's the voice of reason at a time when there is again unrest in the valley. Interestingly, the Kashmir Valley has always been in unrest. If you read Kalhan's Raj Tarangini, you realize that there were these small principalities and all that, and they were always fighting. And Islam comes in a very gentle sort of manner from there. They don't convert anybody they don't want to. But at some point of time, for political reasons, of course, people always want to sort of bring up religion as something that they can divide and therefore rule. But it is the voice of people like Lal Ded which completely overrides every other voice in the valley. So my journey towards Lal Ded has been interesting because I was at the age of 40 and tired of everything that Western feminism that I had followed very passionately, and finally I felt a little shortchanged by my own choices and said, I really need to find a voice that allows me to be gentle and compassionate and not have to constantly fight against the energy of whatever it is that is obviously, that defines our lives, but at the same time, it puts you into constant conflict. So I started reading a lot of literature, not literature, but a lot of drama of Frank Arame and, the women who talked about their bodies and a lot, because I was like that as well. It's my body, I can do what I want with it. We become super women and then we want nurture, but we don't get nurture because we've already given ourselves a superwoman tag, and there's so much else that, we all know what we're talking about, this whole generation of us. So I started reading all the bhakti and the poets, and I had 14 or 15 women poets when I started out. And finally, after 2 years of reading, I narrowed it down to 4, and one of them was Lal Ded, the other was Meeta, Akka Mahadevi, and Andal. And strangely, without my having really tried to do it, 2 of them were Shaivites and 2 of them were Vaishnavites. So Akka Mahadevi from Karnataka, she's again a Shaivite. And slowly at the end of that time also, I tried putting all 4 of them in a play that I thought I'll do together, only to realize that these 4 poetesses from 4 different parts of the country actually belong to the landscape, and their words emerge from those landscapes. They emerge from the air and the breath of that landscape. So when Andal writes, is from Tamil Nadu, and she's of the riverine, tradition. So a lot of her verses talk about water and being at the banks of the river and how she worships Vishnu and all of that. And Akka Mahadevi is from Karnataka, of the sandalwood forests. So her relationship to Shiva, and she calls him Chenna Mallikarjun, which is the Lord white as jasmine. She refers to him as the Lord white as jasmine. And then she speaks about herself as this frail creeper on the sandalwood tree. And there are many allusions to her relationship to Shiva, and also her relationship to society, where she actually talks to the men and says, men, why do you look at this body, this woman shriveled, this breast shrunken? So it's a woman who's actually sort of taking on the world and also, being with Shiva completely. Then, of course, there's Meeta, we all know. Then there's Lal Ded, and something starts happening with Lal Ded. Suddenly, the architectural beauty of her Vak, and they're called Vak, they're mostly 4 lines, starts doing things to me. So one of her poems Vaks is, by mastering the vital breaths, I cut through the 6 forests till the moon woke up in me, digit by digit, and the world dried up in me. Now it's just like, the moon woke up in me. It's like, suddenly there's a moon in my body, but where is it waking up and where is it going, So I was really attracted to Lal Ded's architectural thing. And the other thing I noticed after some time was that there is no clue about the fact that these Vaks are written by a woman. At the same time, it is unmistakable but that they're written by the feminine. So, because she gives no clues. And the vast body of her poetry is actually to do with her own yogic practices. She roamed the valley of Kashmir completely naked after the age of 17. She discarded her clothes because she felt clothes were just unnecessary for the soul which already was wearing the body as clothing. So why have some more garments? And to walk in that climate of Kashmir in that 700 years ago, I mean, even 50 years ago, it was freezing in June. She lived and walked naked amongst the people after disappearing into the forest for meditation, comes back as a realized mystic. And she walks naked, and that's the proof that she was also a great yogini. She's a Shaiv Tantric. Interestingly, she is alive and more in the consciousness of the Kashmiri people even after 700 years, which I have not found with any poet, living or dead. Not even Meera or Kabir, With Meera and Kabir, yes, we have Kabir festivals and we have many things and we are taught in school, but it's not that they are a part of the consciousness in the daily lives of the people. But Lal Ded is part of the daily consciousness of the Kashmiri people, whether they're Hindu or Muslim. And she very much belongs to, for example, there's a phone ringing. Could somebody shut it? I can't still. Can you hear? It's in this bag, I think. Some bag. Sorry, it's distracting me a little. I was trying to ignore it. No, don't worry. It's very soft. So there's a friend of mine who's no more, a lovely theater director called Bansi Kaul, and he was Kashmiri, and he talks about the fact that when he was a kid, or when they were all children, the mothers would scold them with a Lal Ded Vak. And so the kids would sulk and, they would get fired with a Lal Ded Vak, Kus mare ta kas maran mare, kus tamaran kas. So go, sit in a corner. Then after some time, they would actually be cajoled back with the same Vak. So clearly so now what I'm going to do is in my play, which I will do I won't do the excerpts, but I'll try and do as much of it as I can. The Kashmiri language, there are 10 Vaks in the Kashmiri language. I learned the Vaks in Kashmiri, 10 in Hindi and 10 in English. And initially the idea was not to have Kashmiri Vaks because people will need translation. And then I thought about it. And I said, no, something very strange happened before that. I'd actually come to Pondicherry to Adi Shakti to work on them. It was one dark, rainy night, and I won't tell you that ghost story, but it made me get up, and I had by now read everything on Lal Ded that everyone had written. Ranjit Hoskate's book was not out at that time, but I had read Ramanujan, and he I feel, comes closest to the most beautiful rendering of the sensuous quality of the Vak. Sensuous not as in the way we understand Shringar Ras or something, but in the sheer sort of tangibility of nature and elements and all that. And then I had read Kashmiris and the calls and everything, and I had read commentaries on it. The one thing I had not read was Lal Ded, the way she spoke her Vak, which was Kashmiri. And I don't know Kashmiri, but I had this book which had the Hindi script for the Kashmiri. So the first Vak I read at 3 in the morning, frightened out of my wits, couldn't go to sleep. So I said, what can I do now till morning comes? So I said, I will read the Vaks in Kashmiri. So I started with Kusmari ta kasmaran. That was the first one. Mari kustamaran kas. And that's the first time I understood why Lal Ded's Vaks were something that just entered the consciousness of her listeners, because it's the first time I understood the rhythm that was the Vak by saying it in Kashmiri. And then I understood the economy of the words that she uses, and that changed a lot. And then I said, we anyway watch American Hollywood films, we don't understand the accent half the time, we'll still go with Bruce Lee all the way till we understand the film halfway through. So why can't we have our own indigenous language fall on the ears and let it do its magic or its task or whatever the feeling. So that's why. So let's do. Let's do Kusmari and Kasmaran. So I'll tell you what this Vak means. It's Kusmari ta Kasmaran Mari Kustamaran Kas. You can see you're all poets. I don't even need to explain it to you. And the rhyming is not at the end of the line. It's somewhere in between. That's also the Vedic structure, apparently. Kusmari ta Kasmaran Mari Kustamaran Kas. Yus hari hari trevet gari gari kare ad sumrit tamaran tas. And this says, Kaun marta hai, kaun marta hai? Who kills, who dies? Who killed you? How did you die? Kusmari ta kasmaran mari kustamaran kas. Who kills, who dies? Who killed you? How did you die? Yus hari hari travet. You said, go away to the Hari within, to the God within, to the divinity within. You said, go away, go away. Gari gari kare. Gari gari is an onomatopic sound for the world. Gari gari kare, you want it. Come, 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 world, come to me. Ad sumrit tamarantas, you half remembered your own divinity. You killed yourself. You died. So let's do Kashmiri together. Should we? Kusmari. Kusmari ta kasmaran. Marikus tamaran kas. Yus hari hari trevet. Gari gari kare. Ad sumrit. Tamarantas. There you are, we're all Kashmiri now. And now then, so my play opens with this Vak. It also opens with me in an upside down head position, which is a bit like this, which was actually inspired by some lines, because I was reading a lot of other women poets. So there's a lady called Anjum Hassan. She has a body of work, but this poem somehow grabbed my thing, and I said, she had actually written it for a beggar woman. But for me, it was, because there is a tradition of a lot of Sufi seekers who would hang upside down in meditation. So this poem, these strange random, Anjum Hassan was like, she was awakened at dawn 1,000 years ago and never went back to sleep. She was awakened at dawn 1,000 years ago and never went back to sleep. Her eyes took on the color of bleak early mornings, and her hair smelled of wood smoke. And for me, it was like bleak early mornings, wood smoke. It was Kashmir. It was awakened at dawn 1,000 years ago, never went back to sleep. It was Lal Ded. And it gave me an image for my play, which is the opening image, which I'll just demonstrate to you. So when the spotlight comes on, after I finish speaking to the audience, you actually just see the head. And the eyes are closed. And then at some point of time, they open. And then I recite, Kusmarit kasmaran marikus tamaran kas. Yus hari hari trevet kari kari kari. Adsumrit tamaran tas. Gagan che, bootal che, chadanyan pavant rat. Arag chandan posh punachui suroyat che, te lagai kya. Lal buchayas bage baras, uchum shiva shakti milit wa. Titsye laikar mas amrit saras, zinde amarasta me keri kya. And then the lights. I take my second position where I start talking about her life. So briefly, her life was about, at the age of 5, knowing. Now these other two works, kus gagan che, you know Sanskrit, gagan, bhutal, che is you. You are the earth, you are the sky, danyan pavantarat. You are the air, the wind, the day, the night. You are the sandalwood that I, adorn you with. You are the flower that I put on you, and you are the water that I sprinkle on you. You are all this, so what do I worship you with? So in a very gentle way, without being aggressive, she's actually talking to us about the fact that a lot of over-ritualism, over the duda about ritualism is actually, what are you worshipping God with everything that He is already? You're just putting Him on Himself or her on herself, whatever. And the third one is very beautiful. It says, Lal buchayas bage baras. Lalla entered the garden of the self. Buchum Shiva Shakti militva. And she found Shiva and Shakti in divine embrace, which means the feminine and the masculine, and the Sushumna Nadi was totally balanced. So Lal Ded entered the garden of the self, found Shiva and Shakti in perfect embrace. Having experienced that, the nectar exploded and she died. And having thus died, she is never more alive. She has never felt more alive than, I am more alive than ever before. So there is a lot of reference to this idea of dying, which is to do with, being able to live without reactiveness to the world, and which is probably one of the reasons why Lal Ded has not been able to be confined or defined by the 7 centuries that have gone after her. You call her a feminist, she's gone beyond, way beyond. You call her a, spiritualist, no. You call her an activist, no. So there is no ism in which you can keep her and she's also very funny, because there are works of hers where she will say things like, giving knowledge or trying to give wisdom to a completely stupid person is the same as trying to scratch the hide of an elephant. So don't waste your time. Somebody who's completely stupid, don't waste your time with them. It's like scratching. She was also prophetic. A lot of her works talk about a time will come when the environment will be so destroyed that the apricot and the apple will ripen in the same season. This is what's happened. And mothers and daughters will dress alike and go out of the house holding hands, seeking the same things. She said this 700 years ago. And she says that is when we know that things have gone completely wrong with our society, with our environment. So she had predicted this. And she said when Kashmiriyat will begin to, I have seen the entire valley of Kashmir as a massive lake. She sees it several times. And one of these, finally when Kashmiriyat will come under assault, the lakes will begin to dry. Interestingly, why this is called She of the 4 names is because she's called Lal Ded. Her name was Lalita. She became Lalla, which is an affectionate term. Then there's Lal Ded and Lal Merge. Now, Merge means mother. So for all the Kashmiris, irrespective of them being Hindu or Muslim, she is Lal Merge. Lal Ded. Lal Ded is also the lady with the hanging belly. So they, of course, say that when she removed all her clothes, her belly hung over and covered her, vagina and all that, which is probably some sort of thing. But the point is that So I have this film called She of the Four Names on YouTube, which you can watch at leisure. It's a 1-hour film. I drove from Bombay through Jammu and into Kashmir in 2010 and interviewed a lot of Kashmiris and then did some fiction parts. So everything that you want to know about Lal Ded is there. Right now, I'll just take you through her poetry because also we have only so much time. So, so then you've got the first 3 works. There are other things like Chalonsu, Uzmal Tatrat, Chalonsu, Mandinyan Gatkar, Chalonsu, Panunpan, Kadum, Grata, Hatmali, Santush, Vaiti, Pana. This means the ability to tolerate is the ability to be struck by lightning and to tolerate it. The ability to be tolerant is to be like the grain that goes through the grinding stone. It is to be able to bear the day suddenly turning dark. Mandinyan Gatkar. And if you can be this tolerant, my friend, then you know you have arrived. You're okay. No? There are, yes. And there are other beautiful works, which is in English, it is get up, woman, and make your offering, the meat and the wine in your hand. If you know the syllable, that is itself the supreme place. It matters little what rule you break, what's there to lose. And strangely, you know, I was in Nepal shooting for a film, and I've been doing this performance for 18 years, but I always rehearse. Even today, I was like clearing my throat out there. And I got stuck at this line. I was rehearsing, walking up and down. I had to perform in Delhi, so I was walking, get up, woman, and make your, and I'm like, give your offering, offer your offering, what is it? I got stuck. And I'm saying, why am I stuck here? I'm doing this play for 18 years. And that day I got stuck because within me, there must have been some questions about, you know, given the world we live in cinema and all, as to how I'm supposed to negotiate my way. Should I get smarter on social media? Should I do this? Should I do that? And then suddenly it came, get up, woman, and make your offering. The meat and the wine in your hand. If you know the syllable, that is itself the supreme place. And for me, it suddenly became, whatever you have within you is the only offering you can give. It's in your hand, the meat and the wine. So whoever you are, whatever you are, with your limitations, with your strength, this is the only offering that you can make. So make it. Don't try and be something else. Don't try and be more than who you are. Whatever there is what the offering is, because that in itself is the supreme place. This is the syllable. So, you know, even on a daily basis, she kind of energizes you tremendously. Now, what I'll do is, very quickly, I will... so, Lal Ded, at the age of 5 or 6, knows already that she has lived several lifetimes. As a woman who once gave birth to a child and knew she's going to die, she became a filly, she became a dog, a puppy. And then she says, now this is my 7th birth, and there's no more time for all this business of rebirth and birthing. So let's get it right this time. So, so one of her works is also, ये झील इतनी छोटी राई के एक दाने से भर जाए. This lake is so tiny, a mustard seed will fill it. और इसी में समा जाए गिरते पड़ते हिरण सियार गेंडे दरियाई हाथी. नए जन्म का अब समय कहाँ? And in this lake also fall rhinoceros, jackals, seahorses, the whole number of beings that you can count on your, you know, in your head, on your fingers and toes, will all keep falling into this lake. Where is the time for this another birth? So, what do you make of this poem? It's lovely, but what do you make of it? This is a lake so tiny, a mustard seed can fill it. And at the same time, it is so vast that the entire creation can go on falling in it. What is she referring to? Huh? Eyes, space, black hole? Many things. She's actually referring to the human mind. Our minds. Our minds. So her constant yogic practice was to So why I know this? Because I know the other works, and it took me a long time to realize that, when we get obsessed with one thing, tiny thing, it fills the mind completely. Bas. So one little thing, that thought that you start obsessing with just completely fills up your mind. So it is a lake so tiny, a mustard seed can fill it. And she's actually talking about the human mind. And when you expand it and make it vast, then it can just accommodate the entire universe inside, and it. So some of her works are to do with um, at the end of moonlight, I called to the mad one to soothe his pain with love of God, crying aloud, it's me, Lalla, it's me, Lalla, and I awakened the beloved. This is a translation by Ramanujan. I was one with him then, and my mind lost its filth in that lake of crystal. The mind is new, the moon is new, the vast expanse of water is new. Sats noi, Chandram noi, Jal mein dutum noi. Yan pyat lali me tan man noi, tan lalb noi chas. This is Kashmir. The mind is new, the moon is new, the vast expanse of water is new. I, Lalla, therefore, am a new phenomena. No? Now what I'd like you to do is, so after she knows she has to get married, go to this household where things will be difficult. In the play, I show the mother-in-law as somebody who is not of the level. So there are many wonderful stories about how she was served this much rice covered. The grinding stone would be given to her as a child because they got married young. Because of the Pathan invasions, not because. Traditionally, Kashmiris never married before the age of 25, and even the girls were given the Janehu at the age of 6. They believed very much in the erudition because the idea of Shiva Shakti, so the kind of discrimination between male and female child was never there in Kashmir. Interestingly, there is no caste system in Kashmir either. There are only Pandits. There are no 4 castes over there. And idol worship is not really part of it. So anyway, Lal Ded gets married. She leaves her you must see the film. It'll give you lots of insights. She leaves her home at the age of 17 after the husband breaks the pot of water on her head. The pot broke, the water remained. She filled all the pots in the house with that water and then discarded and realized the calling has come. And she leaves. So there is a story about how she filled the water, brought it, and the husband, suspecting her of whiling away her time at the river for other reasons, breaks the pot of water. But they say the pot broke, the water remained. And she filled with that. So in the play, I actually do that. And then another myth about her was, which people believe, is that she walked on water and her feet wouldn't get wet. So there were all these stories about her. There are many, many fantastic stories, which are probably also true, because when you're a yogi, you can do a lot of things. The last story about her being, at the age of 80, she's sitting in a gathering and she gets up and they say she disappeared behind a wall and nobody ever saw her again. The other one is that she just left her body, and one or two factions that always will create a ruckus, somebody wanted to burn the body, the other wanted to bury it. And that time, apparently, there was an explosion of light. And the shroud just sank. And there was no body inside it. So there was just this fabulous flame that erupted and disappeared into the atmosphere. Which is also something that we know from physics, metaphysics, that yogis can do, which is to, So what I'd like you to do is now, in the play, there's a point, I'll take you to section 3, where I'll give you a lot of her works. And that is a point where she goes into the forest after she has realized that it's time to leave. And one of her beautiful works is, Haath mere thak gaye hain, dusron ke ghar banate banate. My arms are tired of building other people's homes. Hey sharir, kab uthayenge tujhe apne ghar se? Oh body, when will you be lifted and taken out of this? बाद में आएंगे हजारों हाथ हिलाते हुए, रखेंगे तुझे खेत में पलट कर दाईं तरफ. Later on, all the people will come to mourn, waving their hands and mourning, and they'll take you and put you in a field to rest on your right side. And then she says, Kaha Guru ne mere mujhko, my Guru gave me but one percept from without go within. छू गई मुझको बात गुरु की. I took it to my heart, this one percept. From without, go within. And that is when I took off everything and danced. You know, so that is it. So in the forest sequence, there are like, it's only walks when I do in the third act of the play. And there's a point when, exhausted with her yearning, with her meditations and the yoga, she falls and collapses and dies. And I want you to close your eyes. And you will probably be able to see the forest, see her in it, see the movement of that whatever. And you'll also know when she has collapsed on the forest, because after that she will also, and I'll tell you when to open your eyes. So I'll start now. So she swirls, and she's in the forest now. By mastering the vital breaths, I cut through the 6 forests till the moon woke up in me, digit by digit, and the world dried up in me. With love's fire, I parched my heart as one parches gold, and in that moment reached Shiva. Chalon chui was malta trata, chalon chui mandinyan gatkar, chalon chui panun pan kadum grata, hat mali santush vaiti pana. Shiva, Keshava jina, या वो जो कमल जन्मा, नाम उसका हो जो भी, करे वो बस इतना, मुक्त करे मुझे इस रोग शरीर संसार से, नाम उसका हो जो भी, सुबह 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 मैं लल्ला. पूर्ण थकित गिरती पड़ती खोजती मैं उसको अनगिनत प्रयासों से बंद दरवाजे के ताले तक. तब मैं थी, मेरा प्रेम था, फिर देखा उसको. Oh Shiva of the dark blue throat, you have your 6 powers and I have my 6. And yet estranged, I have fallen into grief. For though between you and me there is no difference, yet there is one. You are the Lord of the 6, and I by the 6 am led astray. इस अंत में ना वो रहा, ना मैं रही. मन हुआ बेमन, अज्ञानी अंधा, जाने कब सत्य, निर्मल मन ही जाने परम को. पथ से गई पथ से कहीं बीच में दिवस खोया, कहीं बीच में दिवस खोया. जय बटटोली जब मैंने पाया कौड़ी भी न थी.
नदियां पार करने को अब कहो तरावा दूं तो क्या I didn't put my hope in it even for a moment. I didn't trust it even by a hair. Still I, Lalla, drank the wine of my own sayings. Yet I seized that inner dark, brought it down, tore it, and cut it to pieces. I burned my filth in myself. I slew my heart, and then Lalla, my name, spread abroad, even as I sat just there with bended knees. लल बुचायस बागे बरस वो छुम शिव शक्ति मिलित हुआ तित्स्य लाई कर्मस अमृत सरस जिंदे मरस्त में कैरी क्या Moi, Lalla, je suis entrée dans le jardin de mon esprit. J'ai vu une Shiva et Shakti. Je me suis émergée dans la Bouddha. Et moi, je suis plus vivante. Coupe donc ma faire les mondes. मैंने पूरी घाटी को हर मुख से कौसर नाग तक एक विशाल झील के रूप में देखा है। जिस दिन कश्मीर की घाटी को हानि पहुंचेगी, उस दिन ये झील सूख जाएंगी। Okay, you can open your eyes. There was a little bit of a vark in my bad French because it's dedicated to a lady called Nishtha Thai who lost her entire clan in World War II in France. She was a young woman, only 17 or 18 years old, so her whole family, her fiancé, everybody got killed in the bombings. In absolute despair, she got into a ship and came to India and went to Banaras. And she found the works of Lal Ded. I don't know how. And she says they gave her so much strength that she could build her entire life from the works, by reading the works of Lal Ded. So then from Banaras, she moved to Pune, where she finally started doing a lot of work as a young woman, social work and all kinds of things. And she took on the name of Nishtha Thai. Nishtha means grit, determination, devotion, all of that. And I got to know about her when I just on the first show of Lal Ded. I used to go anywhere where there was a mention of Lal Ded. And I read this central piece in the Times of India, and there was this lady called Nishtha Thai, who's a French resident, now living in India for the last 70 years. And she started her journey because she discovered the works of Lal Ded in Banaras after she lost her entire family in the bombings of World War in France. I just jumped on to the first train, bus, and landed up at Arthashri where she was staying, and I asked her how and why. So we had this wonderful conversation. She was a little old woman. She looked like a Saraswat Brahmin, very fair, wearing her sari, but speaking impeccable Marathi, but French. Then she said, "You must do Lal Ded for us here at the Alliance Francaise." So then she took me to meet the gentleman at the Alliance Francaise, who, by the way, was also a poet. He was a bureaucrat, but a poet, like, where is she? Bureaucrat French. Gita, yes. Yes, and the others. So now he was an interesting guy, and he said, but you know, if we have to do anything with the Alliance, it has to have a French connect. So it is not enough, Nishtha, that you have brought her here. We have to do something. So what can we do? Can you do a little bit of the play in French? I said I could do one work in French. So he said, okay. So he sat and translated and coached me in this Lal Buchayas Bage Varas, Moi Lalla, Je suis entre de la Jada, or whatever. And he coached me in it, so I do it the way he taught me. But I've always retained that. I did it for the Allianz show, but I retain it as a part of the fact that Lal Ded also brought Nishtha, as she got to be known, from Paris all the way to Banaras and to Pune to live her life here. So there are many, many, many stories of Lal Ded. I think we should stop now, right? Okay. So the last work I did, which was for those of you, was yes. Now then I'll sing you another. Yes, I should talk a little bit about what it means for us as actors, actresses, to actually deal with the vachik, which is such a precious thing. Most people think it's important to look good and to just be there physically and to just be physically there. But the spoken, the uttered word is actually the word of enormous divinity and power. So the music composer who's composed 3 of the works for me in the play. So when Lal Ded comes from having filled the water and enters the home space, and she's just standing there and she sings, I went out in search. I didn't realize when the day dusked. When the day got over and the night, and it dusked, and I didn't even realize when the night got over. I was so engrossed in searching for that. And then finally, I found him at the end inside me, right here. And that is when Ghat mein hi mere kant chali. And that is when our eyes met, and that was it. Our eyes met, and that was it. Now the interesting thing is that everybody says we all believe that there's this divinity within, no? So, and apparently it's only about the ability to go. We travel all over the world to see the northern lights and all that stuff. But the toughest journey that we mostly don't manage to take is this little crescent moon of your nail, which is a journey from here to inside to meet with the divine flame within. And that is what Lal Ded says, that the divinity is within. Why do we have to go anywhere? So even one of her works, even though she's a Shaiv Tantric, is the temple is a pile, the idol is a piece of rock, the temple is a pile of stones. Oh, Pandit, what is this? From head to foot, it's all one stuff. Pandit, what is this you worship? If you can bring your mind and breath in alignment, then you have reached some place. Otherwise, what are you doing? So, मंदिर में मूरत पत्थर की, मंदिर भी पत्थर का ढेर, ऊपर से नीचे तक सब एक, पंडित तू क्या है पूजे, So anyway, so then there's this point when she comes, and there's a still moment in the play, and I just sing. So my music composer had composed it as खोजन निकली सुध न रही कब दिन बीता कब रात ढली मिले अंत में घट में ही, घट में is the pot, the clay pot, मेरे कंठ छली. So the tune she had made was very beautiful because I told her I want a sense of the mountain. So she had made खोजन निकली सुध न रही कब ये दिन बीता कब ये रात ढली. So now as an actress, how do I make visual this poem? I have made visual, because I made you close your eyes, I also couldn't do much. But hopefully one day I'll show you, we'll all see the play that I do. So now, this is a mountainscape. It's for those of you who've experienced the mountain and sometimes seen birds flying. And sometimes you see these trails and people walking, a single person be walking. So how do I make this? So as an actress, what I do to this piece of music is खोजन निकली सुध न रही down. कब ये रात ढली खोजन निकली You see how people disappear when they're walking the... So that is how one sings the music then. So one of the last, I'll give you the last set of Vaks so that you go home with her poetry. This one is again sung. So at one point of time when she's come with the people, and then people ask her all kinds of questions. So she says, Guru Siddhamol ne kaha, Ishwar ko apne bhitar khoj. That's the text part. But even uske liye bhi ek anushasan chahiye. My guru said, find the divine within, but even for that you need a discipline. And it's only when I left everything that I realized where and what is the distance between him or the divine and me. And somebody probably has asked her, how do we get there? And she says, you know, the only way you can do it is through struggle and tapasya. So anyway, so one of her very beautiful works, which is very famous also, is I bloomed like a cotton flower. I bloomed like a cotton flower full of hope and joy. मैं कपास के फूल सी खिली, उमंग और उम्मीद से भरी. That's when came the carders who actually ripped me off the branches and then spun the cotton and made it into a fine thread. And I was hung from the carder's thing, and then he spun me into a cloth. I was hung and beaten. The fine thread, the yarn was, thanks. And after that I was made into cloth, and then the washerman came and dashed me on the washing stone and scrubbed me hard with fuller's earth. Then the tailor came and he took this cloth and he cut it very carefully into several pieces. And that is how I, Lalla, reached there. So this is a very famous one of hers, and it says, मैं कपास के फूल सी खिली. At that time I'm like actually उमंग और उम्मीद से भरी. तभी आए बेलने पर रगड़ने धुनकने वाले पिंजारे. धुन का मुझे पीटा मुझे, फिर एक स्त्री ने चरखे पर काता मुझे. महीन सूत मैं बनी, बेसहारा टांग दी गई. जुलाहे के करगे पर प्रहार किए जुलाहे ने अपनी बुहारी से मुझ पर. मैं कपड़े में बदल गई. Then the washerman dashed me on the washing stone and scrubbed me hard with fuller's earth. फिर दर्जी आया, कैंची उसने चलाई मुझ पर और बहुत एहतियात से किए टुकड़े मेरे. इस तरह हुआ सब कुछ, इस तरह पहुंची मैं लल्लेश्वरी. पहुंची उसके करीब. परम एक है, God is one, और वो सब में है. He's in everyone. उसे पाना है, रास्ता कठिन है, साधना से ही उसे पा सकता है. You want him? The way is hard. It's only through extreme discipline that you can get him. And then she says, with a rope of untwisted thread, I tow a boat on the ocean. Where will my God hear me? Will he bear me across? like water in goblets of unbaked clay, I waste away. My soul is dizzy, all in a whirl. I want to be home. And in the last few minutes, there's this beautiful, interesting story about how a cloth seller narrates in the play. She roamed naked, so sometimes children would run after her and throw stones and things. And he says, she was roaming naked, and I gave her a piece of cloth. And I said, hey, Lalla, cover yourself. Hey, Lalla, apne sharir ko dhak lo. And Lalla apparently took the cloth, ripped it in two from the center. She put one on one shoulder and one on the other, and she kept roaming around the whole day with these two pieces of cloth on either shoulder. So every time somebody would be very respectful towards her, she would tie a knot on the cloth on the right shoulder or whichever. And every time somebody was disrespectful, she would tie a knot on the other piece of cloth. So at the end of the day, he says, she came and she puts both the pieces of cloth, because those days cloth used to be sold by weight. The ancient times. They didn't have meters and all, they sold it by weight. So then she gives them both the pieces of cloth and she says, weigh them. Tell me which one's heavier. Which one has more knots? This one has more knots, that has less. So which one of these is heavier? He found that they were both equal. The weight didn't differ. So one had 100 knots, one had 75. But on the weighing scales, each piece was exactly the same weight. Then she says, it doesn't matter. What does it matter if they worship me or insult me? How does it matter? She said, when you are in touch with the divinity within, then what is this? It's ash, a smatter of ash thrown on glass. It actually polishes the glass. It doesn't spoil the glass, it polishes it. And it was very interesting, but I understood this Vak after some years of performance when I was performing in Haryana at the Surajkund Mela. And it's an amphitheater. And there were these people, some in the darkness, there was this bunch of young men. I could tell they were young men because the hooliganism of it was very apparent. And it's a very quiet play. So while people are sitting and watching, these guys had this went on jeering and booing. So I would wait for them, and for a moment I thought it was very easy to say, listen, throw these guys out, call the cops. They were all standing. Then I looked at the lady cop, but she was leaning on her gun and she was watching this play. She wasn't aware of these guys. And then I looked at the audience, they were all watching. So what those guys were doing was immaterial. So if it disturbed me at all, I ignored it. Then when I came to this Vak, which comes nearly at the end of the play, Puje Push, let them, I suddenly realized the experience of it. So then I suddenly said, you fellows out there, this one is for you. This Vak is for you. This particular Vak is for you. So it's like, Puje Pushp se ya patthar mare, Nawai sheesh ya dutkare, this is for you. Jo man unke chahe kahe kare, chinta nahi, raak se kaanch mela nahi hota. And that was the first time that, because I followed the Lal Ded path of not being reactive, of not being aggressive, I actually entered the zone of the experience of that Vak. It would have been very easy, and I didn't do it consciously, it just happened, because maybe I was in the Lal Ded space, and when you're in that space, you will not allow your equilibrium to be assaulted. You will not either react to it, you will not harbor anything, you will let it slide like water off a duck's back, because your journey is important. Because what you are heading for is important. All these things are smatterings of ash, this and that and all. So it was amazing that I could have called the cops and said, throw these guys out, and they would have done it in a jiffy. But I let them be, and then this Vak suddenly became an experience in real life for me, and I felt so blessed by those chaps out there, So yes, so that'll give you the closing. So there are many, many things that happen when, even the film that I hope you will all see, we shot it like, there were two women with me, young women, 25-year-old, both of them. I was 40 at that time. And I told them, when we go through Kashmir, you will only ask 2 questions. One of them was a camera woman. I said, you will only ask 2 questions. One is, do you know Lal Ded? And if the answer is yes, the next question that I will ask, and you have to film the answer very quickly, is, what is your relationship with her? And it is so fantastic. I think poets are such divine creatures, because when the Kashmiri people started talking about their poet, Lal Ded, whom they share as a shared icon, and they do not say, oh, she was a Shaiv Tantric who converted to Islam later. No, the Muslims say she's a Shaiv Tantric. She is a Shaiv Tantric, not was. She's still there for them. She is. She's the DNA that binds them. And when you see the film, you will realize that because they are speaking about the poet and they're connecting through the poet, everything else falls away. Even a guy sitting in a Jammu camp, when I asked him, he said, I read Lal Ded every day. So I said, Acha. She's a goddess. I used to have these, so he's really quite traumatized because he's been living in that camp for 20 years now. I had a lot of apple orchards. I had lots of them. So I said, what happened then? I'm not expecting him to say, you know, something about the other people came and took it away. No, the goddess gave it to me. The goddess took it away. So when they're speaking about their poet, you realize there is no other, no political agenda. It doesn't exist anymore. The minute you converge on the poet is actually their DNA. She's their spirit, she's their soul. She is what has kept them going. Both the Muslims and the Kashmiri Pandits, they are there. I mean, for them, that generation, if it is happy, I mean, if it's somewhere lived the insanity of the last 25 years, it's because of Lal Ded. And there's, of course, this beautiful line I read. I don't know who wrote it, but they said, in times of despair, go with the poet. Follow the poet. So I'll do the last work. One of the last works that I close the play with Lal Ded is, it's both in Hindi and English. When the sun was gone, the moon came. And for those who, I think, study a lot of the texts of Sri Aurobindo, you know the sun and the moon, it's the supramental mind and the other consciousness. When the sun was gone, the moon came with that round face of his. I often wondered, why round face? Why not just the moon? Then I realized, oh, there's a moon that's a waxing, waning moon. So it's not the moon, it's the full moon, which is the mind, you know, that super conscious mind. When the sun was gone, the moon came with that round face of his. When the moon was gone, the mind remained. When the mind was gone, where did they all go? All things born of sight, earth, ether, sky. Thank you. Thank you. Please don't stand. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm so honored, and this is basically, I'm just standing behind Lal Ded. So it's between her and you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Anju. Thanks a lot.
Well, we could go on and on, Mita. It doesn't want to end. That's all I want to say. Thank you. No. We'll just do a little standing. I think it's getting very late for most people. You don't want to say anything? Sure, you all don't want to read?
No, we don't want to. After this,
I will take home. Why should I spoil this year?
Come, we're going to take a photograph on the stage. Whoever's here, please come. Not at all. Not at all. I have to tell him. I have to tell.
I wish if I could put it in a time loop, I would be
Yeah, beautiful. Well, she'll have the play sometime. When we get a sponsor, we'll have it right here. हो जाएगा. Yeah, experts. No, but we can.